KD said the following on his podcast regarding Kyrie's decision. Basketball is obviously the most important thing, but I try not to let that get in the way of somebody else's personal decision. Like I said, whatever happens, the friendship will still be there. Freddie, I'm going to start with you on that one. All right? Should KD feel betrayed by Kyrie?
No, he shouldn't feel betrayed because here's why. Kevin Durant knew what he got himself into when it comes to Kyrie Irving. We can't say that, hey, Kevin, here's a new book, and you didn't know what the book said when it comes to Kyrie Irving. He knew exactly what he was going to sign up with and who he was going to sign up with, and that's why he let the Valhalla, that was the Golden State Warriors, because he wanted to have that more of a friendship with somebody that he had more in common with than he had the Golden State Warriors, although he won 2 championships. I don't know how much more in common you can have when you're part of that organization. So I'm not going to say that Kevin Durant should feel betrayed by Kyrie Irving because he had to have known the kind of personality and the kind of friendship that he wanted from Kyrie Irving. So if anybody starts saying, hey, poor Kevin Durant, no. They're grown men that made a grown man decision. Kevin Durant made a grown man decision. So no, feeling betrayed by Kyrie Irving when you knew exactly what kind of person and personality that you're going to get involved with to try to win a championship. Betrayed, you feel betrayed if somebody says you can't go to the mall Sunday afternoon, they promise you money. That's when you feel betrayed as a kid. But as you're Kevin Durant feeling betrayed when you knew exactly who you were getting involved with, yeah, I'm not buying that he should feel betrayed by this whole thing.
No, he should absolutely feel betrayed. This is somebody who coaxed him to come to Brooklyn, Freddie, to win a championship. And last I checked, this is a team that got bounced from the first round of the playoffs this year in large part because of everything that transpired up until the postseason. Kyrie Irving deciding that he wanted to be a part-time player, not abiding by the vaccine mandate, all of that. And now all of a sudden, if you're not going to get your way and get the big max deal that you want, using Kevin Durant as leverage, mind you, I would be a little upset about that if I was KD. You're going to go call your ex in LeBron James here and put him on a list of 6 teams that, oh, if things don't work out with Brooklyn, I want to go and play with LeBron James again. I would feel spurned if I'm Kevin Durant. And I know that he said it's a basketball decision and that he understands that Kyrie has to do what he has to do for himself. But Kevin Durant's also smart enough to know that he's the linchpin in this whole thing, that in order for Kyrie to get what he wants, he needs KD in all of this because the Brooklyn Nets want to keep Kevin Durant happy. So I would feel some type of way if I'm Kevin Durant right now, given the way that this thing is playing out with Kyrie Irving and all that is going on behind the scenes and potentially what might happen if he does leave the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, listen, I think that in Brooklyn, when it comes to Kyrie Irving, I don't think it's going to be too personal. I think that this is about basketball. Kyrie wants to be a max player because he has max player talent. You know, he wants to be paid the way he should be paid. Now, you know, if I'm a player and, you know, I'm not playing enough games, you know, I understand that I may not get the contract that I'm going to get. He may feel differently about why he didn't play those games. And, you know, but Brooklyn's got to put a winning team on the court. When you have Kevin Durant as a player, you can't waste time wondering about who's going to play and who's not going to play. If you're going to pay somebody max money, you got to make sure that they're on the court. And that's not a slight on Kyrie at all. That just means that we got to win here in Brooklyn. We have one of the best players in our generation. We got to win. So Brooklyn's got to put the best team together. As far as Kyrie goes, he's got to do what's best for him personally, right? So he's got to put himself in the best position for his career, his family, and to play basketball. And if that's not in Brooklyn, then he's got to move forward. And Kevin Durant understands that.
Yeah, here's the deal. I'm going to go at, Courtney, what you said about coaxing somebody. How are you allowed somebody to coax you? They can give advice, and you're a grown person where you can say to yourself, okay, I'm going to follow along with it. When you use the word coax, you make it seem as if you're trying to give Kyrie what he wants, because Kyrie wants to be an alpha male, but no one's ever going to trust that guy to be an alpha male. I'm not following that guy into the abyss of Kyrie dumb when it comes to him. So if you're Kevin Durant, if you allow Kyrie Irving to use your word, not saying it's a bad word, but to use your word, coax him into doing that, then what does that say about Kevin Durant? That all of a sudden you're going to follow along with somebody along the lines of Kyrie Irving based on previous events with what went wrong in Boston and then the end in Cleveland. We would not be talking about Kyrie Irving being a world champion if Draymond Green didn't get kicked out for Game 5 of that series or LeBron did not have that chase down block of Andre Iguodala in Game 7. So that's who Kevin Durant is going to be coaxed by when it comes to Kyrie Irving. I would find a different box to have somebody coax me from that standpoint because too much of that, in my opinion, has gone on with Kevin Durant being coaxed by situations or by people to align his line of thinking or where his future should be in the NBA.
Well, the two of them had the same plan, the same vision to go win a championship together in Brooklyn. It was their first chance that they were going to have to do something together. They're building their own thing. So Kevin Durant signed on to that. I can't fault Kevin Durant for not knowing how a global pandemic was going to play out with his teammate and his decision to be a part-time player here. I can't fault Kevin Durant for Kyrie Irving in the part-time nature just of his mind. Does he want to be all in on basketball? Does he not want to be all in on basketball? He gave him a chance. And when he is at his best, Freddie, you know this. He's one of the best shooters in the NBA, best pure scorers,
There's
most
no
dominant
doubt.
players on the floor. So I'm Kevin Durant. I'm thinking, that's the version I'm going to get. I trusted you to be this person.
You should have never trusted Kyrie Irving to begin with.
And you haven't shown up for me.
But he deserves better. Like, Kevin Durant deserves better than what he's gotten in Brooklyn. I think everybody can agree with that. When you look at his numbers and how he performed when Kyrie was out of the lineup, when James Harden wasn't playing, he deserves better than this. And I think it's just really unfair that people are critical of him and his legacy over the time. Like, listen, what he did in Golden State, he stepped up. He carried that team for that time that he was there.
No doubt.
He needed him in that time. So for people to be taking slights at his legacy and saying that he needs to go and lead a team, he gave Kyrie the opportunity going to Brooklyn. He gave James Harden the opportunity to win a championship, and he stepped up and he did his thing. Kevin Durant isn't the reason why there isn't a championship in Brooklyn. I don't think that's the guy to blame.
Right.
So, you know, everyone's got to take a step back. I'm interested to see what Kevin Durant does next. I'm really interested about him, not anybody else. Does he decide to stay in Brooklyn and say, I'm going to put my trust in the team, whether we have Kyrie or not, that they're going to surround me with players to give me an opportunity to win a championship? I think he deserves better than what he's been given.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.